Hallelujah. Yahweh Zebaot, the coming season of your Moedim, the perspective we all have in preparation, with your words, your Torah written in our hearts, and for us to walk into. In the coming season, thank you for this day and this opportunity to listen, to be your people with our hearts set on what you said, your words and your definitions of your words. Hallelujah. Amen.
Amen. So here we are, Psalms 119. This is RESH. So how do you get these things stuck in your head? Typically, advertisers have found success using little gimmicky musical things, kind of like na 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 RESH man. There, that'll stick in your head. Kind of like Batman theme song, you know. RESH man. So there's two letters which are basically man. Vav or Wa, the sixth letter. It actually doesn't mean man, it means nail or that which attaches, bonds together, a hook. Could be a bridge, could be the word and, but however, if, when, all those are connecting concepts. It's the masculine suffix. He is the feminine suffix. Vav is the masculine suffix. So it ends in a noun word. If it ends in a vav, you might think it means he or it or its. But quite often I've seen it translated meaning theirs or they or them, or sometimes I think I've even seen you. So the question is, well, is there hard and fast laws, rules of grammar where these letters get their use, where they get their definition? Well, what's the thing about RESH? Well, it's the first word in the whole entire Bible. Bereshit. Bet is a prefix letter, not really the word. Rash, Resh Aleph Shin. Yod Tav is a suffix. You can break that down. Bet Resh is a word that means pure and clean. Bet as a prefix means in, on, with, among, through, against, in the condition of, or for the price of, for the value of. Resh Aleph Shin, but Aleph Shin is the word fire. Resh Aleph, actually Resh Aleph Hey means to see or have something on exhibition. Aleph Shin is fire. So you could say pure fire, Bet Resh Aleph Shin. Yod Tav, like I say, is a suffix of being something and being in a condition. But Shin Yod Tav means you would pronounce that as whether the Shin is pronounced as an S or an SH. It's to sit or set. Shet, you could say. It's a basis, a foundation upon which everything else is built. So if you were looking in the Red Dictionary for the word rash, rosh, rosh, rosh kadesh, rosh kadesh, resh, what's the correct vowel pronunciation? Well, I've heard it expressed all the different ways. So I'm likely to think there's not a absolute. It reminds me of a story I heard that I think what it was is like there was a restaurant, Der Wiener Schnitzel, and the Germans pronounced it differently, and the guy was met a English-speaking guy, met a German guy. He says, "Hey, maybe you could clarify this once and for all. Is it Wiener Schnitzel or is it Wiener Schnitzel?" He said, "It's clearly Wiener Schnitzel, der Wiener Schnitzel, the name of the restaurant." And the guy says, well, thank you. I have no more question. He says, thank you very much. He says, you're very welcome. Welcome. Get the joke? It wasn't an answer at all. That's how you see it. Anyway, if I'm looking at RESH ALEF Sheen on page 600 of the Klein's dictionary, head, chief, leader, top, summit. But it's also beginning, basis, foundation. The topmost stone. Resh Aleph Shin Hey, but Resh Aleph Shin Vav Nun, Rashon, first, former, previous. Well, then that means it's like the chief cornerstone. So is it the top stone or is it the first stone? It's both. First, before, in the first place, Rashonah. Antiquity, preference, priority. Rashonot. That's the plural of Rashonah, but there's no plural if it's antiquity. See, that's the thing. It's like, even though the Vav Tav is a suffix meaning plural, hey, it would be the feminine suffix. So if a word ends with hey, technically that's a feminine suffix, then you change that to a Vav Tav. Well, here in the dictionary, they say, well, one means in the first place, and the other one means antiquity, which is in the first place, a long time ago. And it's like, in other words, what I found is that Ernest Klein, who wrote this dictionary, might have got it exactly right. But anytime, like I was looking up the word for a synonym for the word sentimental yesterday in the dictionary, dealing with another word we'll talk about. And the English synonyms were just crazy. They're just, those aren't synonyms. I mean, one facet out of 14 facets might be similar as a synonym, but this other stuff is just nonsense. To who? Merriam-Webster thought it was the synonym. So anytime you look at a dictionary, just so you know, or a translation, it's somebody's attitude, somebody's interpretation, impression, and you might say, well, no, that's definition. Yeah, but is it the best definition? Is it Yahuwah's definition? Well, how do you find what his definition is? Because Black's Law Dictionary, I was told, has a dozen different definitions of just the word is, which is why, as I said before, when Bill Clinton was being impeached and the Senate, some members of the Senate were grilling him at a type of trial, inquisition, they asked him, is your relationship? Says, it depends what the meaning of the word is. Well, that's true. It depends on what the meaning of the word is. Well, who's going to now sit down and define the word is rather than conducting the case at hand? Well, that's what you have to do. You have to define terms before you can ever answer a question. Well, see here, Rashoniot, antiquity, primacy, originality, headship, main, primary. Resh Aleph Shin Yod Hey, Rashia, a headpiece in the harness of an animal. Well, that's just a piece that's in the, like a headdress, you could say, having to do with leadership. Here, Rashit, Resh Aleph Shin Yod Tav, like Bereshit, means beginning, first fruits, but it's also the choice and the best part. Primitive. Resh Aleph Shin Nun is a tadpole. What's a frog tadpole have to do with anything? Large-headed. Okay, so when you see a tadpole, it's got basically a head and a tail. It's got a big head that sprouts legs and then turns into the frog, and then the tail disappears. But what I'm saying is that By looking at the dictionary and seeing, just even on this one word, all the kind of the places that it goes, you get a sense of how the language is built, how it itself, this one word, resh aleph shin, you might say became all these things. So somehow, if Adam was given the language because he had to name all the animals, if he sees a tadpole and he goes, Rashon, he had to know, he had to have programmed into his thinking originally, the thing I see the word resh aleph hey means to see, put on exhibition, allowed to perceive. He made himself apprehensible to be able to be seen and comprehended. That's resh aleph hey. And what he looks at when he sees a tadpole is this big head with a little tail there. It's like, this is the head animal. It's all about the head, like the giraffe is all about the neck. You could say the crocodile is all about the mouth, or the hippopotamus. But the point is, the significant feature, you see the head of that tadpole. Okay, so that's resh aleph hey, means to see or put on exhibition. Resh aleph shin, if aleph shin is fire, well, you could say, if resh aleph shin means head, you got fire in your head. What does that mean? I got a big idea. I got all kinds of ideas. Is that having a fire in your head? Or maybe you're angry? See, what any of those actually means, what you think about when you see these words, is purely up to you. That's the act of meditating, contemplating, navigating the language, pondering the spelling of words, all of which is the word hey gimel hey. Haga, hey gimel hey, means navigate, rudder, helm, steering wheel. Well, if you've got this device that helps you turn, now that's an object in a car, on a boat, even in an airplane. But because you got your hands on this thing and you're moving it, you are now going where you choose to go. That's navigating. Well, what I just did in looking at Rashon, is exactly the same thing. My hands aren't on a steering wheel, but what my hands are on are the letters and the dictionary and the concept. I'm saying resh aleph shin. Oh, there's a resh, there's an aleph, there's a shin, there's an aleph shin, there's a resh aleph. And I know that resh aleph doesn't generally stand alone. It's got to have resh aleph hey, resh aleph yod. I mean, it's one of those words which needs the third letter, because resh aleph by itself doesn't exist in the dictionary. But that being said, you'll find words that are two-letter, call them verb roots, or two-letter basic word spellings, that may not be in the dictionary, but you'll see them in use in the scripture. So, for example, we're going to bump into this word later, which is simply bet vav. That's the word, pronounced bava, or bawa, or bo. Lamed aleph is pronounced lo, but that's an aleph, and an aleph is silent. Why don't you just call it le, if aleph is silent or kind of an e sound? But lamed aleph is pronounced lo. Why is that a vav if it's an o sound? Just saying. In English, we have some rules of grammar. I before E, except after C, except sometimes. And it's like, gosh, when they come up with all these except sometimes, that's the way it is with this. There's rules of grammar you can learn in terms of usage, syntax, except sometimes. And there's always that except sometimes. You got to just go with it. So, for example, resh aleph hey, to see, was seen, was approved of, showed himself. He chose, approved of, or preferred. So Resh Aleph Hey is say that was the one I choose. That's the best one in my estimation. It's like, what's that got to do with seeing? Now, if you put somebody on an exhibition, you're saying, hey, look, this is the one. But it also means they looked at each other. Well, that's Shinayan, I believe, also. Maybe Shinayan Hey. I believe that's the word, where they looked at each other or turned attention away temporarily. He showed himself, appeared, pretended or feigned, caused to see. Look, if you pretend to do something, how is that Resh Aleph Hey? It's also the word vulture. It's also the word for lungs. How is that the same word? Resh Aleph Vav Hey is sight or exhibition. And it's like, well, okay, but now I can, wait a second. If you got a vulture flying around up there, they're looking for carrion. They're looking for a dead body. I guess that's all they have to spend their life doing. They fly around looking for something, smell the decay, and then they come down to feed. Just saying that Resh Aleph Yod, mirror, it's also appearance or aspect. It's also excrement, something that's like, oh, did you see that? Don't step in that. It's something that's just draw your attention to it. Pollution. Resh Aleph Yod Hey, evidence or proof. Resh Aleph Yod Vav Nun, Rayon, appearance in the temple, a pilgrimage to the temple, appointment for a meeting, going on an interview. See, so I can look at this and say Resh Aleph Yod Vav Nun, to go on an interview where I'm going to be given the opportunity to present myself, or I'm going to go check somebody else out to see how they present themselves if I want to, let's say, consider them for employment. So the Yod Vav Nun, as a three-letter suffix of Resh Aleph, is the act of engaging somehow two parties in the Resh Aleph experience. Yod Vav Nun is the having of that event, you could say. So what do I do with that? I mean, this is Resh Aleph Yod Vav Nun. I apply it to Zion, Zadi Yod Vav Nun, Zion. What's a Zadi? A resurrection? Zadi is a Zadik, righteous. Zadi, the sprout, the blossom. What's Yod Vav Nun? It's like, well, Yod Vav Nun is the having of the experience. So why is it called Mount Zion? That in Jerusalem, there was a mountain called Mount Zion. David built his place there. You go there to Jerusalem, they'll say, well, Zion used to be over there. It's not there anymore. Hundreds of years ago, somebody came in and I don't know that they had bulldozers, but pick and shovel, they dug in and removed and hauled it away, the entire mountain. So now there's a sign up somewhere in Jerusalem that says Mount Zion this way. And it's like, well, it's just this theoretical location, which isn't their actual location, because they need Mount Zion because the Bible talks about Mount Zion. So if the word mount is hey resh, and hey is a prefix letter that points to, it means the, it's like, hey, look at this. It's offering as a display. Well, the resh letter stands by itself. Aleph is a strong first, bull, like bull. Resh, like bull. Resh Aleph. So what's about the resh like bull? Something made prominent, preeminent. Well, hey resh is the word for mountain. Hey resh would be the mountain. So hey resh doesn't mean the mountain. Hey resh is the mountain. Hey resh is just mountain. Or you could double the R, make it hey resh, resh. And it has something to do with like a mountain. But hey resh is also pregnant. It's also to have some kind of thought. So if you want to say, well, what's the reshness? Is you look at all these words, if you already know the value or the use of the other letters, the suffix yod vav nun, the prefix letter hey, the aleph right after the resh, and then you look at other words spelled with other letters, and you see what those other letters do to the primary letter you're looking at, like the resh. And then you try to get a feel, a sense of what's this primary letter we're talking about, in this case, the resh. How does it function? What is it doing? So I could give you a list of, a list of things that you might say this is what resh means. Or I could say, if you look in the dictionary, you're not going to find that. And in fact, if I look in the Klein's dictionary, the 20th letter, it means literally head, so called in allusion to the ancient form of this letter. Well, to liken it to English, it's in the Hebrew, the backwards of the letter P. P is in Paul. Well, that's just a vertical with kind of a flag or kind of a head. Like I said, if the kuf is the back of the head, it's like the front of the head, and it's like, so it's called head just because it looks like that? Is that why they call it the letter resh, head? It says, he's just breaking down the way it's used. In fact, he doesn't even tell you anything more than that. Resh can be used as a suffix, but he doesn't even see resh isn't a prefix, but all he says is it has something to do with the word head. But that's where if you look at resh aleph, doesn't exist, resh aleph hey, resh aleph yod. I could look at resh aleph tav. There's resh aleph tav nun, an unidentified disease. Well, what do you do with that? My point is the act of trying to determine what is a resh. Okay, it means head. Okay, because it's drawn like a head. Well, you draw the letter like something else, and it means something else. I mean, which came first? The shape of the letter, the meaning of the letter, the name of the letter, the use of the letter. Was it an arbitrary assemblage? When I think of the letter resh, these are the things that come to mind. Mashiach, right out of the gate. It's like, well, which Messiah are you talking about? Just the fact that resh is a man, a man's head, an exalted man. And the vav, the sixth letter, is the masculine suffix, but vav was after the hey and before the zion. So if I looked at hey, vav, zion, hey is like putting on display or being birthed from the woman, hey being the feminine suffix, dalet's a door. So I could look at dalet, hey, vav, zion and say, well, there's a door of the woman that gave entrance to the vav man, who was then zion, which means distinguished by a weapon or put to the weapon. So he had the crown of thorns, crucified, thrown into the tomb. Well, that's a heck of a job for that man. But hey, the tomb opened up, Zadi sprouted out. There's the resurrection of the Zadi, Kuf, this ascended, because Kumi, Kufav Mem means to arise. The shape of the letter Kuf, the letter Q, round with a vertical. And as we were talking last week, that could be simply the female and the male, the combination of those two graphic elements, the circle and the line. It's the back of the head, so it's like the neck and the back of the curve of the head. But it's also, if you looked at a mouth like the Aquarius water pourer constellation, the mouth of a jar pouring and the water coming out, so the round is the mouth of the jar and the water pouring out is the line. You could say if there's a tunnel with a train going into the tunnel or train track coming out of the tunnel, there's the circle and the line picture. But when Yeshua rose from the dead 40 days later, he ascended into heaven. He, being the vertical line like the Vav man, ascended enveloped by clouds. There's the circle, metaphorical type. And as he goes up, the angel said he's coming back the same way to the same place. So him, the vertical Vav man, now in the RESH position, after Kuf, Kuf means after this, back the head, with hordes surrounded by his Zavot, his armies, whether they're humans ascended or whether they're angel armies, he's coming back with the hosts of heaven. So there's the Kuf picture in the RESH event. Kuf picture. The one who rose up is coming back. So this word kumi can mean both arise, but it's also you dig a hole and you plant a post into it. That's kum, hamakom, makom, mem kufa, mem is that place. So he's coming back to this place, Mount of Olives. That's makom, and he rose up, kumi. So what I'm saying is as you contemplate the words, the spelling of words, the use of these different letters, and you remember the different Bible stories, one kind, you might say, feeds into the other one, which validates the story, which validates the use of the letter. So because I know that I believe the gospel narrative, which anybody who doesn't read the New Testament has no use of, no advantage of. But if you do read the New Testament, then you can see this, and you can see, well, the Vav man put to the weapon was put into the tomb, het, round rock, tet, rolled in front, pinned shut, held yod, hand hold, the iron rod is hammered into the face of the rock to keep that thing from rolling away. And the Roman guard, that's a type of yod holding it. 3 days and 3 nights, he burst out, Pays Audi, bam, there. Open mouth. Open what mouth? Mouth of the grave. Well, but I can liken that as a metaphor to, I know the story of Israel. Israel, which we're going to look at later, in Jeremiah especially, was told very clearly what happened and why, and then what to expect. Well, what happened and why is the metaphorical picture of Yahusha being the prime candidate, the Resh man, in the Vav form of the common man. So there's this phrase I heard a long time ago, Messiah ben Joseph, Messiah ben David. What's that? That people who study the scriptures say, well, there's the indication of 2 different role casting types for the Messiah figure. One's a suffering, pushed down Messiah, and the other one is a exalted, pushed up, raised up Messiah. Are they both the same? Is there 2 Messiahs? And it's like, well, who did that study? Hundreds of years ago, a bunch of people. Were they Jews? Were they Christians? I don't know. Maybe they're Greeks that were writing the Septuagint. The point is, other people have determined that. And if you start looking for yourself, you might find these 2 different types of roles of mentioning a Messiah type. Well, nobody says Resh is Yeshua. Nobody says that the Messiah figure is Yeshua. So the Resh in the word Bereshit is not necessarily Yeshua. But it is, by definition, a Messiah type figure. So if Resh is a Messiah type of figure, then you go back, and if you happen to read the gospel stories, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you see, hey, wait a minute, look at Yahusha's narrative storyline, the gospel narrative story, like a storyboard, cartoon strip pictures. If you could make separate incidental pictures of the gospel narrative, and let's say you made 22 of them, where'd he come from? What's he doing here? He came from the heavens in some capacity, traveling to the earth, which means he had to come into the universe, cosmos, materialized. Hey, that's put into the bet form as the Gimmeling, the Voyager, to come through the portal of the pelvis of the woman, the Dalet of the hay, to be the man who would be distinguished and put to death, Zion, Het, thrown into the tomb, in there 3 days and 3 nights. So you've got Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samakai, and Threi, Skamakai, and Pei. There's the group of 3, Mishkan pattern. And then he sprouts from the dead, rises up, coming back as RESH, gloriously shining our Elyon sheen, Tav. That's the end, the conclusion. That's this is what it is, sign here. Well, there's the Mishkan pattern, not the Mishkan pattern per se, there's the alphabet read as in sequence order. And you realize they're pretty broad strokes. They're pretty, some of the steps between the letters you might say are pretty big, but if you're going to reduce the entire gospel narrative or the hero's journey down to 22 facets, phases, pieces, stepping stones along the garden path, the story of Yahusha hits every one of them. Boom, 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 boom. Skipping a rock across the lake. 22 steps. There it is. That's him. So me already knowing the gospel narrative story can look at the 22 letters and go, look, that's a story. So that RESH is Yahusha resurrected from the dead, ascended into heaven, and coming back in that capacity, which you might say is now full-faced, full real being. Whereas the Vav man, well, that was real. But see, the Vav man who came through the Dalet, paid through the Dalet, what's Bet Gimel Dalet? Well, I assigned value that Bet was coming into the material cosmos, Gimel being the voyager, the ambassador, the emissary, the traveling one from the other unknown realm, whatever it is, the Aleph zone, the Aleph dimension, which is simply not this material dimension. There could be numerous other stuff going on the other side of Aleph. We're just calling all that stuff that's unknown the Aleph zone. Coming into the Bet realm, well, the word Bet Gimel Dalet means to deceive, to betray, to cloak, clothed in deception, treachery, beguiling. And it's like, clothed in deception, why become clothed in deception? Why, that's a bad thing. Well, if I assign negative value to the word treachery, deception, which it is, the beguiling or betrayal, and yeah, but what's it mean? It means he's in disguise, like a spy, like a secret agent. Secret agent man. Well, RESH is, here I am. Oh, hey, no more secret agent man business going on. This is him. Well, that reminds me, there's stories about like the prince and the pauper, where the noble man, the prince, wants to know what it's really like out in the trenches, out in the villages, so he can't ride in his dignity and glory. He gets dressed up like some pauper, a poor man, a peasant, and he goes and he hangs out at the local bar or watering hole, or gets a construction job and sees what's going on. How are the custodians treating the workers? How are the people that have been given the jobs to run the businesses actually treating their workers? And then so you'll find, bosses undercover TV show here and there, those types of things. Well, that's the Messiah, the real RESH guy, coming to this universe world as the Vav man. It works on TV, it works in movies and stories. Don't you think it's because they got it from somewhere or that it works here? It's the same story. You already know the story. So RESH is, hey, this is the real boss. Uh-oh. You'll see some story where on the internet, some person dressed like a homeless or dressed in blue jeans and t-shirt type of guy walks into some fancy hotel and they give him a hard time, say, get out of here, your kind isn't welcome. He owns the hotel. Well, he came to see how they would treat him. It's the same exact story. And then he finally reveals, hey, look, I'm the guy that owns this hotel. And, oh, we're sorry. It's like, okay, yeah, now you're sorry. My point is, you know the story already of the whole alphabet. You know this alphabet. You just don't know that it is the alphabet that you know the story about. So once you see the story in the Aleph-Bet, when you want to say, I got to learn how to read Hebrew, just plug in the equivalent value to each letter of the place in the story that you know that it represents. So when somebody says the alphabet, the Semitic alphabet, is a random collection of letters represented by objects that some culture in the distant past, whether it was the city of Byblos in Phoenicia, or whether it was some troglodyte cavemen who just were grunting and picking up a fish skeleton and say, oh, let's call this Samek. And a fish hook, okay, that's the Zodi. And hey, there's a camel out there. Let's call that the Gip. The people who believe that are the type of mind that believe in Big Bang theory of evolution and everything just all of a sudden happened. Nobody knows why. And it's like, what I'm saying is, because you can see Yahusha's narrative, gospel narrative story in the Aleph-BEIT, to me, that's the proof that when he said, gosh, isn't there his prayer to his father at the Garden of Gethsemane before he was arrested and crucified, he said, isn't there any other way? Are you sure this is the only way to do this? Gosh, as a human being, I don't want to have to do this. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours. I'll do whatever necessary. And you can say, come on, man, you got that. You're the one who made the rules. Change the rules. Make up some other rules. Do some fancy footwork of changing the definition like a good lawyer would do. And all of a sudden, right now, change the meaning of the letters of the words so you don't have to go through this routine. Well, why did he keep it? Why did he go through the crucifixion, the resurrection, 3 days, 3 nights in the tomb? I believe it's because he was walking out this gospel narrative, Aleph through Tav, storyboard, storyline, letter by letter. And the more we know about what he did and why and how, the more it validates the entire thing. And therefore, as I want to understand each letter, if I pin it back on him and look at his story, the one validates the other. It's basically the ultimate catch-22. And there just so happens to be 22 letters in the Aleph-BEIT. How do you like that? How about that? A catch-22 is you've got two sets of a situation, and this side of the situation can't exist unless the other one exists. But this one can't exist unless that one exists. So you can't have both. If you have neither, if you have one, you can't have it. You have to have both at the same time, but they're both dependent on the other. It's like, how do you even get one of those things set up? Well, the phrase catch-22, just so you know, there was a book written, I think it was back in the 1970s, and a guy was talking about an airline pilot who an airliner was about to crash or was having trouble up in the sky, and some situation where I don't remember the detail, he had to have fuel going, but he couldn't have fuel going unless the electrical was working. The electrical wouldn't work unless the fuel was working. So it's like, I got to have both or neither. And it's like, oh, yeah, what do I do? And somehow he had to solve the problem. But the idea that there is such a thing called a catch-22, where you have to have both parts or you don't got either one. When I saw Daniel 12 back in 2005, Daniel 12, hide the words and seal the book, Daniel, until the time of the end. The phrase until the time was spelled ayin dalet, hyphenated with ayin tav. And then the word the end, the word the isn't there. There's no letter hey. It just says QOOF-YOD-TET. QOOF-YOD-TET means end or extremity or come to the end of something. It's like summertime, the end of the growing season, and now it's harvest. Yod QOOF-YOD-TET means wake up. So QOOF-YOD-TET is the end of something, not necessarily the end of the world. Could be the end of the curse, could be the end of the 3 days and 3 nights in the grave. Now it's time for Yahusha to raise from the dead. But ayin dalet, ayin tav, I realized, is a catch-22, meaning one is hyphenated to the other. Ayin dalet, if you know the meanings of the letters, ayin is to see, like RESH, ALEF, hey, but it's also to consider, to weigh carefully, balance exactly, measure precisely, deliberately analyze, and come to the conclusion of what something is. That's ironing the dalet. But what's dalet? Dalet's the door. What door? Question. Hyphenated with ayin tav. Ayin, again, to look at, scrutinize, evaluate, weigh, measure, determine. It's like really wrap your mind around, cogitating, intellectually, logically, reasonably. And I've heard people say, to think is carnal. I was told that. To think is carnal. Don't think. Go by the Ruach. Go by the Spirit. And it's like, what? Hey, if you want to believe that that's your personal relationship experience with Jesus Christ, go ahead. I don't believe that that's a reality, at least not in my world. So I think that the creator of the universe, the creator of Adam's brain and heart, gave him the apparatus to cogitate, think, logical, reasonable, intellectual. Hence the word wisdom and understanding and knowledge, chakma bina da'at, that those words are functional. The word shakil, to plan wisely, shrewdly, calculate, consider, hatshin bet, to analyze, to arithmetical. These are all action words of using your noggin, as they say. That's ironing business. What's tav? Well, tav means a mark or a sign, like a target. It's also drawn like an X. Put an X here, sign your name if you're agreement to the terms of the contract. So it's a signatory of a deal, a contract, a relationship, legal relationship. Well, the X, the sign, the symbol, I agree to the terms of the relationship, all that by definition is ALEF-TAV. If I don't know the dictionary, if I don't know the spelling of words, I might just memorize that. But if all of a sudden I bump into the dictionary where ALEF-TAV means a sign, a seal, a symbol, like a logo that means something representing something else, put your initial or sign your signature here, your autograph, and it means that you agree to all the terms of the stipulations. And then give an oath. ALEF-TAV is, depending on whether the tav is pronounced as a T or TH, is the word oat or oath. Oath in English is exactly the same meaning. I swear, I promise, and if I don't live up to it, I'm in trouble. And then you define what the terms of trouble are. But that's the meaning of ALEF-TAV. Well, ALEF-TAV is also a letter of the alphabet. So if I understand ayin tav, that every letter of the alphabet is a symbol, a logo, a design, an orthographic scribble that means something, then I can plug this back in. Oh, RESH is drawn like a head. Was it random association or was it on purpose? And did Elohim give that to Adam? Or was there no written language? I mean, there's plenty of numerous languages on the face of the earth that have no written alphabet. The Nigerians had one, Iziri, but that was a trade language. A lot of people used it, but then Wycliffe Bible translators, Campus Crusade for Christ, got together and gave them a written language that they then started printing the Bible in about 20 years ago. From my understanding, Flemish, you don't write it. You write it, it's no longer Flemish. It's Flemish 2.0, but it's not Flemish. You don't write Flemish. So Adam could have known the language, but never written it. My point is, we don't know. There's no record. There's stories, whether you can believe the stories. But when Moshe was at the burning bush in Exodus 3, the word bush, the bush, is spelled Hey, Samach Nun Hey. Samach is an engineered structure like a menorah, which is a design, a pattern, lines with purpose, engineered on purpose. Noon is a spark, is a jump, is a life, is an idea, a concept. So you could say that there's an idea associated with an orthographic design that then Hey expresses what the first Hey was pointing to right there in the word, the bush, Hey, Samach Nun Hey. That's the, let's call it the impetus for inventing the Hebrew alphabet right there at the word, the bush. Now, whether Moshe invented the Hebrew alphabet at the bush or after thinking about the experience, the encounter with Yahweh at the bush, we're not told. But it's numerous chapters later, Moshe was told, write all the words of Yahuwah. And he couldn't have written them in Egyptian or Sumerian. That was about 1600 BC. And that's when the earliest Semitic writings show up, about 1600 BC. In fact, the oldest ones are maybe 12 to 1500. Moshe was somewhere around 15 to 1600. Calendar gets a little confused back there. But what I'm saying is whether Adam could write, Shem could write, Melchizedek could write, Abraham could write, it's all speculation. But we know Moses could write, and we know Moshe encountered Hey Samak Nun Hey in Exodus 3. And then later, 7 chapters after Moshe was told to write down, Ketub, write, Kaf Tav Bet, all the words of Yahweh, then Yahweh himself with his finger inscribed in tables of stone. Did he use the Paleo? Did he use the modern? Nobody knows. So where was the first, the former, the most ancient antiquity, original, primary, primal, of greatest value? Was it the days of Adam? Well, certainly it was verbal language. Was it Enoch? Did he write stuff down? Well, they say he did, but nobody's found anything. Was it, if Enoch wrote stuff, was it the Hebrew? Nobody knows. It's all speculation. Everything's speculation until you get the ancient Semitic alphabet around Moshe's time. So the word paleo, Pelamed Aleph or Pelamed Vav Aleph, also synonymously means ancient, primary, hidden, mystery, wonderful, and it happens to line up with Rosh in that context of being the first, the best, the greatest at the very beginning. And then, even though there wasn't necessarily any paleo writing at the beginning, not necessarily, I can go back and look at the very first word. I'm just trying to show you the method of analyzing the language here. So you have this experience as I'm going through this of saying, oh, this is how you translate. This is how you analyze the language. This is how you figure out what things mean and how they're used. You go back to the word Bereshit, bet, in, on, with, among, through, against, in the condition of, for the price of. To turn for that which was otherwise in only the dimension of the heavens and beyond, whatever that looks like, to come into material, physical universe, corporal reality, what we call reality in this cosmos. The construct state, that's bet. Rosh. So in the very beginning, the Rosh was put into the construct state. Well, what does that mean? He had a big fire in his head. I got this great idea. So the great idea was what? Well, bet also means house or body, or to be embodied in some sort of capsule, encapsulation, like in the universe, a baby in the womb, or my soul in my body, my spirit, my whatever you want to call it, my invisible, immaterial part within my material part. That's all bet stuff. Resh steps out of bet. That's like the man, the owner of the estate, stepping out of his house. To do what? I don't know. He's going for a walk. He wants to look at the outdoors. But it's just a picture of Resh stepping out of the bet. Okay, then what? Aleph. There's an ox. Hey, that suddenly I think of Paul Bunyan and Babe, the Big Blue Ox. Hey, that's like, he was a big Resh man, and there's Aleph the ox. Then what? Sheen. Teeth, fire. Yod, Shin Yod is the word for gift, G-I-F-T, gift in English. But Shin Yod Tav is also to get drunk and to fall down and sit down where you can't stand up, or to sit under the basis, a basic foundation of something. All I'm saying is that, now I'm going to have to make up a story of why did Paul Bunyan and Babe the Big Blue Ox, have something to drink and sit down, and what fire was going on. Oh, maybe the stuff they drank was fiery fireball or something. It's like, it's just assigning picture story development so you can remember the things. That's all it is. Now, the purer you can get to not, I'm going to make up definitions like Paul Bunyan and Babe the Ox. What does YHUH say? Well, how do you know what Yahweh's definitions are? Well, you could look at Ernest Klein's. That's getting there. That's pretty close. But what I'm saying is comparing it to Yahusha's own personal story. That's pretty close. So if I say, well, how does YHUH define the words for himself or define the concepts for himself? It's validated by Yahusha's gospel narrative story. But then here's where the Mishkan pattern comes in. So I can say, if you look at the 7 days of creation, there's the pattern. It starts off with everything's tohu vebohu, formless and void, nothingness. Some people say there was a pre-existing creation that was destroyed. That's another story. I don't agree with that. But the point is, it was tohu vebohu, formless and void. That means nothing. You didn't even have oxygen atom bonding to a hydrogen atom and forming water, because that's form and that's not void. So formless means there's not even any atoms, which means there's no electrons and protons to form the elements. There's no elements. Was there even any photons of light? Not necessarily. So what was it? I mean, this is complete, vapid, empty, not annihilation like there was something, but non-existence of anything other than the fire in his head idea. And then he spoke and said, he or, and suddenly there's somehow designed light. Was there light or was there photons? What's photons? Energy. See, if I use the science I know from what I was taught and plug it back into the Bible, like knowing the New Testament and plugging it back into, let's call it the Old Testament, it's a mechanism of my logical, here's a random puzzle of the random set of pieces of a puzzle. Let me see how fast I can put them together. It's the same type of a thing. So if I say, well, it's all tohu vebohu, and he says he or, he would have at least had to invent electromagnetic energy, and whether the energy existed as an object or a force, if I can label it, well, see, nothing existed before that could be labeled. So as soon as he said he or, boom, suddenly things can be labeled. Is it there? Is it not there? It has location. Is it a force or is it a particle? Is it a wave or is it an effect? As soon as I can start labeling things, you see, now it's all bet. So when he said it was all formless and void, he said this is before there was any betness. Suddenly there's betness, and now we can start assembling, putting things together. The table of elements. Table of elements didn't exist then. See, it all depends on how do you want to take what scientists have told us and then assemble things. And then when you realize, wait a minute, some of the scientists were making stuff up, and that's not how it works at all, based on what other scientists now tell me. What do you do with all that? But if I go back to just Bereshit and I can say, in the beginning, RESH, the Messiah figure, built a house that he wanted to step into so he could step out of. And there's this fire, which is a passion as a foundation. What is that? How's he do that? Okay, but if I start with that, that's Bereshit. Then I could say that he had this fire in his head that was a passionate, craving desire, which is the meaning of Ab, father, or youthful verter, Abib, Aviv. He had this big idea. And he's going to build the universe, which includes him stepping into it so he could step out of him not being here. He had this big idea. Well, what's the big idea? Well, see, if I have that as a question, what's the big idea that is hanging there unanswered? And then I go back to jump into Daniel 12, Ayin Dalet, Ayin Tav, catch 22. You got to understand the door before you can understand the terms of the letters of the covenant, but you have to have the terms of the letter of the covenant, catch 22, before you can understand the door. What door? Well, in this case, the door was him being born of a woman to enter the cosmos. Yeshua claimed to be the door. Yeshua, two different ways to say his name, depending on your preference. The point is, it's probably more likely Yahusha, but nevertheless. Yahusha said, I am the door. Goes on to say, nobody enters my Father's house except through me. So he's more like the door, meaning like the gate out at the edge of the estate property line. Nobody can even get into his Father's house. He's the guy at the entry gate. Or is he the door of the house? Somebody's already barged into the property before they can break. Anyway, I'm just saying you have to picture this. But if he's the door to my Father's house, then I can say, what's Ayin Tav? Well, the word house, bet yod tav, bet, literally can be also translated taught, trained, and domesticated, to be of the house. So is his father's house this estate? Is it a mansion? Is it a place in the heavens? Or is it to be taught, trained, and domesticated of his father's ways? No man can get into the understanding of my father's ways except through me. See, that's a little different than getting into the pearly gates into the kingdom of heaven. So if I say, well, nobody can accurately assess who's the father and get into his taught, trained, and domesticated way of mind and heart except through YHUH, because YHUH is the one and only pure bet resh example, having come here from there to put that on display. That was his mission objective. I only say what I hear my father saying, and I only do what I see my father doing. And you're supposed to be like me. So you, Adam, Israel, who's the who that he's talking about? You're supposed to be just like me. Follow me. That means that our ultimate objective is to know what our Father is saying and do it, hear it and do it, and see what he's doing and do it. Well, then, if he ultimately at full face value is the resh, then for me or you to hear what my Father's saying and comprehend it, to see what my Father's doing and do likewise, is the resh status. That's what our mission objective is to become that, which means that I can say, well, if I can follow my existence as Aleph, call it the spark of existence, conscious autonomy, my selfness is my Alephness. I'm put into a body, bet. I'm given mobility, gimel, and the right to choose direction, dalit. Hey, I'm being told, this is the suggestion. Put before you life and death. I suggest you choose life, but you can choose whatever you want. Then for me to make that choice is to connect with the one of the two alternatives. That's the Vav. And then Zion is kind of like this sealing, this finalizing, this kind of, like I talked before about doing a computer program and you're making a DVD and you don't hit the finalize button. All the work you did disappears. It's not locked in. So somehow the Zion locks it in. So something about the Sabbath day locks in. That's just the way it's built. But see, now I've appropriated a value of my own life, Aleph through Zion. Well, what's Het? Het is the grave, but Het's the kingdom. Het is all the stuff we talked about, being this other realm that my decision gets me to. If I choose death, I'm in the grave and the door's shut. That's the Het. But if I choose life, even if I die, I don't die. I'm into the eternal realm. That's the Het. I've got the choice. I've got the dalit. Hey, I suggest you choose life. Well, you choose. There's the Vav, like your hand being on the gear shift and you're shifting into either this gear or this gear, one or the other. You got to do that. Well, okay, you got to do that because that's what he gave us. But the objective, if I choose life, is become the resh. So I can sit here and say, Mashiach is the resh at maximum archetypal value. But in essence, the resh is the exalted man. It's the honorable, virtuous, noble, face-on, glorious majesty, champion status, success, victorious, esteemed by man and Elohim. Remember, it said YHUH developed that while he was on the earth, operating at capacity, potential fully realized, actualized. That's the reshness. The goal of mastery for which all apprenticeship aimed. Everything you're learning, everything you're developing, everything you're experiencing and making decisions, this is the way to do it. This is better than that. Better not do that again. Hey, this would be the next time I'll do it. That's all becoming the resh man. The ideal relationship dynamics. As a man, what's the ideal in relationship to who? as a man to a woman, but see, Resh could also be a woman. It's just man capacity as Adam. As a spouse, a parent, a boss, what's the ideal behavior, heart, and thinking and procedure that a boss does, that a parent does? What's the perfect ideal? That's the Resh. 5 minutes. As an employee, as a contestant, somebody on a sports team, as a son or daughter, as a soldier, what do you do? What's the best way that you can accomplish your task, your job, your role? That's Resh. As Israel in cahoots with YHUH, that's Resh. When YHUH had this idea, hey, I'm gonna make the universe, and he's gonna what? He's gonna give opportunity to develop and to extract out of all the various people that are born to walk the face of the earth. He's going to extract out a select group that he dubbed the name Israel. That's the elite cadre. Israel. The select of the select, the Bachar. Yeah, but you don't have to be the greatest warrior. You could be a paraplegic and still be Israel. It's a matter of the mind, the heart, if not the physical capability. So then the question, where and how does one engage what the epitome of life is about? If I read the Aleph-Bet, then I can project that the epitome, the reason why we exist, is for, out of all the various atoms, human beings that were born on the face of the earth, who wants to become that Resh? Who will determine that's my goal, that's the objective? And where's the model of that Resh? Yeshua claimed to be the model. Don't believe him. No, wait a minute. Should you believe him or not? You listen to this voice, the rabbis will tell you the guy's a big stupid jerk and he's boiling in feces in hell at this moment. That's what they say. I choose not to believe that. You listen to somebody else and they say, well, he wasn't a god, he was a man, he was like a prophet. And you listen to somebody else and they say, he wasn't a man, he was God. He was a God man. He was fully God and fully man, or half God and half man. And you got these debates over 2,000 years of who he was. And I could say, well, he didn't claim to be God. He claimed he fulfilled the role of Mashiach. When somebody said, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. Peter said that, and he said, yes, oh, hey, the Ruach HaKodesh must have revealed that to you because I was in disguise and you couldn't have figured out he was Bet Gimel Dalet as the Vav man. In no way, Peter, that you saw through my Bet Gimel Dalet disguise, cloak of deception. What does that mean? You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. You are the Mashiach. Did somebody translate that? What's Mashiach? Mashiach literally means the tangible communication. What communication? 22 Hebrew letters. So if he's the 22 Hebrew letters put into manifest bet form, then both his narrative story, the gospel narrative, 22 letters, and also his embodiment of being the word now made flesh, the Son, well, the word son is bet nun. Bet yod nun means the understanding. Bet nun hey is the construct, the construction of Elohim. The construction, the manifest substance in human format as Adam of the communication of Elohim. The communication of Elohim is spoken through the 22 letters. Then what Peter said was not, you are our God that looks like a human, let's worship you. I don't think he meant that. I think what he was saying is that he realized somehow this is the manifest of the word made flesh, the construct, touchable, graspable communication. And everything he says is the ideal, making it simple, making it the essence of reality, truthfulness, not slippery deception of some other agenda of priest manipulation, control of the masses, Nike over the laity, but he's giving us the exact This is the heart of my Father on display. I'm only showing you him. If you've seen me, you've essentially seen him. I'm not him. I'm the Son. I'm the manifest construct state of that which is ethereal, invisible, without form or substance, and can never be seen at face value. But here I have this face, but don't make any face. Listen to his words. With that, we got to take a break.